Hello everybody, welcome back to another one of my YouTube videos. Today we are gonna be doing our March Madness picks. So sorry I cannot verbally show you it, but I can tell you my picks and stuff. So our first game, we start off in the East, 1 seed UConn going against 16 seed Stetson. I actually don't know much about Stetson. All I know is it was a surprise they made it. But UConn's obviously in the store. I don't have to tell you anything else. Next up, we got 8 seed FAU coming off a really good season last year versus 9 seed Northwestern. Again, I actually don't know much about Northwestern, but I do think FAU comes out with the win, which I think they're gonna get hot. I mean, next round they have to go versus 1 seed UConn. That's gonna be hard. Next up, we have 5 seed San Diego State versus 12 seed UAB. UAB had a down year, going down 2 spots. San Diego State made it to the championship last year. Really good. Surprise. They had like a surprising season. This year's still down year though, because they got 5 seed. Last year I think they got 5 seed. They're expected to get like their year 2 seed. But I still do think San Diego State will pull it off. Now we have Auburn, 4 seed Auburn versus 13 seed Yale. Auburn, I think Auburn from the SEC, they could go deep, bro. Yale's not good enough to pull this off. There's only a smart school out there, bro. Next up, we have 6 seed BYU versus 11 seed Duquesne. I don't know how to say that, but I have seen a few games. They look like they can be a surprise. I haven't seen much of BYU, but actually, the one game I saw, they got blown out. So I'm picking 11 seed Duquesne to upset BYU. Now, for our last two games, our first one is 3 seed Illinois versus 14 seed Morehead State. Illinois lost in the championship game to Iowa State, who's looking really good. But I still think Illinois will pull it off because I don't know much about Morehead State. Now, we have 7 seed Washington State versus 10 seed Drake. Last year, I remember hearing about Drake. They might have been lower, they might have been higher, they might have been the same. I forget. I think Washington State was like a 10 seed last year, so an improved season, I think. But I'm going with another upset, and 10 seed beating 7 seed Washington State. Our second upset in the East. And last, but not least, in the East, we have Iowa State versus South Dakota State. So, you know I'm a football guy. South Dakota State might come up to college football next year. Or in a few years, not next year. But, I don't know. Iowa State, again, I told you, really hot winning the Big Ten. So that's why I think they'll have an easy blowout win. The biggest in the tournament in this round. So now they'll go versus Tennessee Drake. Now, moving on to the South, we have 1 seed Houston taking on 16 seed Longwood. I don't have to say anything. Houston's going to blow them out. Oops, I accidentally just did something. I don't know what that was. Next up, we have 8 seed Nebraska versus 9 seed Texas A&M. Texas A&M, they were putting up a fight. Nebraska, they kind of look shaky, so I'm going to go with the upset, Texas A&M winning. Now, 5 seed Wisconsin versus 12 seed James Madison. Wisconsin upset Purdue just to lose in the championship to Iowa State. Or no, who'd Wisconsin lose to in the champion? They lost to someone. But Wisconsin looking really good right now, upsetting 1 seed Purdue. I think Wisconsin will move on. Next up, we have 4 seed Duke, 13 seed Vermont. not much to say. Duke's gonna destroy the United Space. I love this matchup. This is probably my favorite in the first round. 6 seed Texas Tech versus 11 seed North Carolina State. North Carolina State wouldn't have made the playoffs if they didn't win the ACC championship. As you know, my dad and me are really big North Carolina fans. I like Baylor a little more, but he loves North Carolina. We were rooting for them, but they sadly lost. So Texas Tech was doing really good too, but I'm gonna go with the upset in North Carolina State. Next up, we have 3 seed Kentucky, 14 seed Oakland. That's not much to be said. I don't know anything about Oakland. I've never heard of their team, so I'm going Kentucky. The last 2 games, we got Florida versus Boise State, I think, or Colorado. Let's just say it's Boise. Boise, I mean, they lost some players last year. Florida looking good. They also looking bad. I don't know. But I'm going to go with Boise State to win it. They're going to get the huge upset as a 10 seed versus 7 seed. Last but not least, Marquette versus Western Kentucky. Marquette is a really good team this year, 2 seed, so I think they'll get the job done. Now, we move on to the West, where we have North Carolina versus Howard or someone else. Let's just say it's Howard. And North Carolina is going to blow them out. It doesn't even matter. Now we have 8 seed Mississippi State versus 9 seed Michigan State. Michigan State was like a 5 seed, so this is a down year for them. But I still like their team, and I'm going to give them the win because I don't think Mississippi State's the greatest. Now we have St. Mary's versus Grand Canyon. Alright, let's be real. I don't need to say anything, but Grand Canyon is trash. Okay? Alright, I don't know who just invited me. Next up, we have Alabama versus Charleston. I mean, again, a way better school. Russell Wilson, Alabama's obviously destroying. I'm just going to say the matchup and then give the better team the win for all those bad ones. Now we have Clemson versus 6 seed Clemson versus 11 seed New Mexico. I don't know much about New Mexico, but Clemson has had a better year. So I'm going to go with Clemson. Stay. Next up, we have Baylor versus Colgate. Obviously, Baylor. Actually, I don't know. I've heard a lot about Colgate. But, I don't know. Next, 7 seed Dayton versus 10 seed Nevada. I think this can be close. I think it's going to come down to the wire. And I think Dayton's going to barely keep the win. They're barely going to do it, though. Alright. Last but not least, Arizona versus Long Beach State. Obviously, Arizona. So the only upset, technically, is really not an upset. It's 8 seed versus 9 seed. Was Michigan State winning. But now, last region in the final round is the Midwest. Purdue versus MTST. I don't know what that is. And Graham. I don't know what that is. But Purdue's winning. And then we have Utah State versus TCU. Utah State has been ranked a lot. TCU has too. But I think Utah State, even though they're high ranked, I think they're going to pull off the upset and win. It's an upset if they win, even though they're higher ranked. Alright, next up we got Gonzaga versus McNeese. Gonzaga's obviously winning. Dang, Gonzaga fell since they last went to the championship and lost to Baylor. Next up, Kansas versus Samford. Jeez, I thought Kansas would be a top 2 seed at least. They're 4 seed. Kansas is still going to win, though. Alright, next up, Oregon versus South Carolina. What is this? Do y'all hear my Alexa? She's going off. She's telling me, Alexa, stop. I don't know what this girl's going on about. Oregon versus South Carolina. 6 seed South Carolina, 11 seed Oregon. South Carolina, I love their play, but Oregon, I love their play too. But I'm gonna give the edge to Oregon because of their court. Their court's fire, bro. All right, next up, Creighton versus Akron. Actually, I think Akron's bad. What are you talking about, Alexa? Alexa, stop. Texas is playing some people we don't know yet, so I'm giving them a 2 seed Tennessee, 15 seed St. Peter, Tennessee will win. All right, let's go on to the second round. All right, let's see. UConn versus FAU. I'm gonna have to give the edge to UConn. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, definitely. Actually, FAU has been shaky. They did good last year, like I mentioned, but I don't know. Next up, San Diego State, who made the championship last year, or Auburn. San Diego State didn't do good, too good in the regular season, but I think they'll pull off their biggest upset this year, or no, like their second biggest, versus 4 seed Auburn to move on to play the championship game from last year. See if they can do anything. Next up, we got Deck One E's versus Illinois. Illinois is better all around. I'm giving it to them. And then Drake versus Iowa State. Iowa State's hot. I'm giving them the win. Now, next up, we got Houston, Texas A&M. Houston's winning. All right. Wisconsin versus Duke. Y'all are probably picking Duke. I'm going with Wisconsin. A little bit of favoritism goes into this. But they're like hot right now. Super hot. I don't think you can stop them. Next up, North Carolina State versus Kentucky. Not a North Carolina State fan, but I'm giving them the upset win again. They're too hot to bet against, bro. Too hot to bet against. What just happened? I'm having to look at something to pick my stuff. Alright, next up, well, the final matchup for this one in the, what region is this? South is Boise State versus Marquette. I'm going to give it to Marquette. Boise dropped a lot. Alright, now Michigan State versus North Carolina. I'm going to run through these first two. North Carolina is beating Michigan, 9 seed Michigan State. 4 seed Alabama is beating 5 seed St. Mary. Alright, now Baylor is obviously beating Clemson. Arizona is obviously beating Dayton. Okay, that round was easy. I do it fast. Purdue versus Utah State. Utah State's pretty hot, but not hot enough to beat Purdue. Gonzaga is also hot, not hot enough to beat Kansas, though. Kansas could be an upset. But now, Oregon, who's really hot, going versus Creighton, who's pretty good. I think a huge upset's going to happen, the biggest of this round. 11 seed Oregon beats 3 seed Creighton. And the last game of this round is Texas versus Tennessee, where I think another huge upset happens, and Texas beats Tennessee. Go versus Oregon. Now, going into these, San Diego State versus UConn. The biggest upset of the tournament. San Diego State gets their revenge. They're blazing hot. They win by 1 in a game-winning three-pointer to beat 1 seed UConn to move on to almost making the Final Four. The Final 8. I don't know how to say that. And then Illinois versus Iowa State. Big Ten Championship. Same result I'm going with. Iowa State winning. So 5 seed San Diego State takes on 2 seed Iowa State. Now, for the other side, 1 seed Houston, 5 seed Wisconsin. Wisconsin pulls off another upset. The 5 seeds are both there. Crazy. I'm going to run by this one. Marquette versus North Carolina State. Marquette wins. So 2 seed versus 5 seed in both of those. Run through this one too. North Carolina beats Alabama, and I actually think Baylor pulls off a huge upset versus Arizona to get versus North Carolina. And now we have Purdue versus Kansas, where Kansas pulls off the upset, gets 4 seed, and then Texas beats Oregon to make it. Now with the championship games. First up, San Diego State versus Iowa State. San Diego State used all their energy last game. Iowa State making the Final Four. Marquette versus Wisconsin. Wisconsin pulls off an upset, so there's a 2 seed and a 5 seed advancing. Now we have Baylor versus North Carolina. I think North Carolina pulls it off, and then Kansas versus Texas. Kansas pulls it. So there's a 1 seed, 2 seed, 4 seed, 5 seed. 4 seed and 5 seed are playing, so that's like good. Now first up, North Carolina versus Iowa State. North Carolina pulls it off barely by 1. And now we have Wisconsin versus Kansas, where I think Wisconsin barely wins. But then in the final matchup, North Carolina wins March Madness. That's going to be all for this video. Please make sure to like, subscribe, comment if you want to see more like this. And I'll see y'all in the next video. Peace.